Again, I have to acknowledge that show title is hyperbolic. We need some government. The worst places to live are countries that have no rule of law. An African country where you're afraid to build a factory because your neighbor may steal what you make, or the dictator may confiscate your whole factory. So nobody builds, everybody stays poor. So we need government, limited government. The man who taught me that was Nobel Prize winner Milton Friedman.
What we need is widespread public recognition that the central government should be limited to its basic functions.
Basic functions. I assume that means what's in here in the Constitution. Government runs the courts, the post office, provides for the common defense. But it turns out that Milton Friedman's son, David, an economist at Santa Clara Law School, says we ought to go further and gradually, David, get rid of almost all government?
All government. I would say that of the things government does, some of them are things it should stop doing tomorrow, such as arresting people for smoking marijuana, and some of them are things that over time we should be able to find ways of doing privately by voluntary arrangements.
Like courts, our legal system?
Like courts. A lot of the law currently, in fact, is arbitration. The American Arbitration Association, in effect, has its own legal rules. Your auto insurance company, in effect, has its own legal rules for settling the dispute when you run into somebody. They almost never go to court. So, yes, I'd say in the long run, making law and enforcing law ought to be private activities.
Now, before we go further into this, I should point out that your book, Machinery of Freedom, goes into the details of how a system without government might work. But I mean, government's laws, this protects the poor and the weak. If you didn't have government, the rich people would just take over.
Are you disturbed by the fact that in a majority of all felony trials in the U.S., the defense attorney is working for the government? That's what actually comes out of our system, where, as you say, if you're poor and are charged with a felony, you get a lawyer, but the lawyer you get is appointed by the